Before an interview ever starts, there's a silent symphony happening behind the scenes. And if you want to create unforgettable conversations, you need to learn how to conduct it like a producer.
On cam ready in 3, 2, 1.
This is Think Like a Producer, an on-cam ready presentation. I'm Jamie Maglietta. Today I'm breaking down the hidden skills most podcasters and YouTubers skip. The things that make guests feel safe, help conversations flow naturally, and make you look more confident, more credible on camera. These are the same techniques we use every day in television, and they'll change the way you prepare and perform on camera. So let's get into them. Every great interview starts long before the camera rolls. We talk about this a little bit in my conversation on Unknown to Known with Alex Sanfilippo. He's the owner of Podmatch. We get into interview techniques, so you may want to check out that episode after you've listened to this. A real producer doesn't walk in blind. You dive deep, not just into resumes, but into storylines, interests, shared experiences, and unexpected angles. Because when you know what makes a guest light up, you can guide them into their best storytelling, especially if you have the time, which you do in most cases on a podcast. Now, in television, it's good to know those things, but you don't always have that space. Research creates the confidence a host needs and the producers need to know that there's going to be a successful conversation. But that research should also be done by the guest. You want to know all about your host. Crafting an inviting atmosphere is what a show team does. We work on making sure that a guest feels welcome. You know, the room that you're in, it speaks before you do. So if you are a guest from home or hosting from home, you want to make sure that your lighting is warm, not harsh, that you sound soft and contained, and your visual cues say, it's safe here. Let's hang out. Let's talk. If you are intense, your guest will be intense. And the same goes for the guest. If you show up intense, the host may be like, oh, okay, we got to change gears here. These micro details don't just make your production look better. They help you and your guest relax. They also help your guest trust you. So lead the way as a strong host. There's always a warm welcome. So in the control room, I would welcome the guests. Whenever they would show up, I would get in their ear before the anchor. Say, hey, thanks so much for being with us. Can I just make sure your shot looks okay? Hey, you have a hair that's loose. Is that a fuzz on your shirt? Maybe you should fix your tie. Do you have any lipstick? And those are some of the questions that I would go through and make sure that they look their best and sound their best and feel good. Sometimes I may even say, hey, we're thinking about asking you this, so you may want to have your thought ready because we have a tight 3-minute window. This would mean to them, like, you don't have much time. We're going to ask you this. Make sure you know what you want to say. A genuine greeting is the first break the ice moment that you have as a host, or even if you're producing someone else's show. Regardless, there's tips here that you can use as a host or a guest. You want to always look them in the eye if you can. Use their name. Let them feel your presence. The producer always knows, how to get people to open up and feel seen. And as a host or as someone who's creating your own space for guests to share their stories, you want to do the same. So think like a producer in those moments. Now, you also want to go beyond the script and have active listening. I can't remember what episode it was, but we talk about how your face needs to be reacting even when your voice isn't, right? So if someone's talking, you don't want to just be like, right? Like that was staring into the camera. Are you kidding? No, you want to be engaged. Oh. Mm-hmm. Practice those voices. And if you're listening on your podcasting platform and there was that moment of silence, no, you didn't lose the feed, the signal. On YouTube, I was giving some facial expression. So you may want to check out Think Like a Producer on the YouTube channel, On Cam Ready. That's where I get some visuals into play. But most of these conversations are just me talking on camera with nothing special, no fancy elements, but I do give some visual cues in case you ever need those. All right. Now you want to listen for what's not being said. The hesitation, the shift in tone, the moment a guest lights up or pulls back. A producer is trained to hear between the words, and that is where the real story lives. So you want to listen between the lines. As a host, as a podcaster, a YouTuber, if you're engaging with others, even in sales, this could relate. Think like the producer and try to read between the moments, the pauses, the blinks. And always remember to have a good follow-up question. You may have pre-written questions for a conversation as a podcast host, or even if you're recording something for TV, like American Dream, right? There's a lot of realtors that might be listening and preparing for American Dream. You want to have those pre-written questions, but the gold is in the follow-ups, the questions that come up as you're having this conversation. So be willing to toss that rundown of questions aside, pivot, probe, and say, well, can you tell me more about that? I heard you mentioned that you did X. Let's take us back there and explain why you did X and how it got you to Y. Something like that. You also have to adapt your nonverbal cues when someone leans in, go deeper. That's what that means. When they cross their arms, they soften their tone. When they pause, they give it space. There's cues visually as well as physically that you could be giving that guest to let them know you're about to dig in deeper. You're about to relax a bit more. Give them space to breathe. This is where confidence as a host shows up. You're not rushing, you're guiding. There's this empathy bridge that we also need to make sure that we're connecting when you're trying to go on a deeper level. Great interviews aren't transactional, they're relational. So you want to make sure that you're building empathy through mirroring, validation, match the energy, acknowledge their emotions. Let them know you're with them in the story, but keep it real. Forced empathy kills trust with the audience. So if you're building out this podcast conversation or even a YouTube show, and again, interviewing people for maybe an HGTV show that you're putting together, whatever it is, you want to make sure that your interview skills are on point. This is also where you may want to think about ahead of time that shared vulnerability, what you're willing to share about yourself in the conversation that could be relevant to the story and help drive home the conversation. If they reveal something personal, you can gently meet them where they are. Don't overshadow them, but connect. That's how you go from Q&A to conversation. Like, what would you say if you were talking to this person out at a bar or, at your friend's house? There's also power in silence. You don't want to be umming and awing over what they're saying. You want to give them their space, and silence is your strongest tool. When you let a moment breathe, the guest often reveals something deeper, something they didn't plan to say, something the audience remembers. And then there's that unforgettable first and last question. Okay, just remember, you want to make sure that you're starting strong, ending strong. So if we're crafting a memorable close, it's always good to pull together the emotional thread of the conversation, not a recap, but a resonance, right? Like pull together a summary without lecturing. You may want to offer like one clean takeaway, something the audience can hold on to before they go to that next episode. Let your guests feel valued. That moment cements the relationship and it encourages them to share the interview with pride. And so before we wrap this up, I just want to make sure that I am summarizing, right? We talked about how important it is to acknowledge your guests, make them feel safe, make them feel seen. You also want to emotionally connect with them, have questions planned, but be ready to pivot. And know that when you are in these conversations as a host, that you are the anchor. You're the anchor that everyone is coming back for. And you want to make sure that you have a consistent flow that you maintain and can keep up with no matter who the guest is. So if you want to connect and have more stronger, in-depth conversations, or just start building your on-camera confidence and create a show that feels like television, not guest work, this Think Like a Producer is where you start. You can also go to my YouTube channel and check out all my tutorials that I'll be laying out across YouTube. I also have Unknown Genome podcast where I interview television personalities, YouTubers, influencers to help you get your mindset in the right place for creating content on a consistent basis. You want to avoid burnout. So I also have the visibility program where I walk you through what really matters so that your social media is your calling card. It's your portfolio. It's where the press goes to check you out and finds that you are the exact guest they want to book for their own show. So if you're serious about becoming known, join the visibility program. Visit my website, oncamready.com. And if you're on camera already and you're just looking to upgrade your look, I have an Amazon storefront. There's a link in the description. Stop all the guesswork and get guidance from a television producer with over 20 years experience. I'm here to help you shine on camera, and I'll see you next time.